Welcome back to Old War Stories with Uncle Jay. This one is entitled CO Poisoning. CO? What do you mean? Co? No, I mean carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide poisoning. Now, this is, of course, a real thing. People have died from this. Fun fact! Uncle Jay almost died from carbon monoxide poisoning twice in his life. And that's what this story is about. This is the first episode is going to hark back to early 2000s. Early 2000s. I don't have a firm date. Probably 2001 to early 2002 would be my best guess. In 1990, I believe it was, my dad had a conversion of his heating system from oil to gas. Nowadays, they're lobbying for everybody to get rid of their gas stoves. That's another story entirely for another time. Anyway, he converted from oil to gas. And it was a big job, and it was expensive, and that's how it goes. But the boiler that was installed back then, 30 some odd years ago, 33 years ago now maybe, is still in service today. It had one breakdown, which happened to be an electronic part. But anyway, that's aside. I think when it was converted to gas, he had the chimney swept as part of it. Not sure. Can't remember. Some reason in '01, '02, whenever this was, he had it swept again. I'm not sure if he had like a stainless steel liner installed in the chimney or something they do now. I don't remember the details. It's kind of all a mystery. Probably because of the carbon monoxide poisoning. But anyway, what happened was he had these guys in, and I don't know if the heat was on at the time, but then it was turned on later or whatever it was. Anyway, I have the computer in the basement, and I'm sitting down there. Now, even though the heat is on, it doesn't mean it's warm because he only sets the thermostat to like 50. That's another story. Anyway, the boiler doesn't run for long, but it doesn't need to run for long. You've heard of people leaving their car running in an enclosed garage with the door closed. Shit like that. Oh, and there's fun also. Millennials with their cars with the push-button ignition. Some of them go to their house that mommy and daddy bought for them, and they go pull their car in their garage that's being leased, of course, as well, with mommy and daddy's money, and they pull it in there and get out of the car and either didn't hit the button firmly enough or forgot entirely and shut the garage door, went into the house, and then were either awoken by a carbon monoxide alarm if they were lucky enough or died. You can't really do that when you have keys. A lot of people will put their car keys with their house keys, and they got one set of keys because that makes it work that way. I'm not one of those people for some reason. I always kept the car keys separate. I don't know why. It was just easier for me. Maybe I don't like all the keys jangling from the thing. Pardon me. But my car has a push button anyway. But I'm not that dumb to get out of the car and leave the fucking thing running. Well, anyways, my dad did the right thing and got the chimney swept. I don't have details, but some maybe to do with the fireplace that was never really used much, or I don't know. very vague details. He tells me that some jewelry was stolen from the house, and he's not the kind of guy that would let anybody out of his sight. But my mother's in the house, not paying attention to anything, and he might be outside watching the guys on the roof, where another guy is inside, and he said, yoink. So I heard something about that. I don't remember. I don't have the full details on it. Anyway, he got the chimney swept. It was a fair price. For my dad, that's a very, very, very tall order to fill, but it was done, and everything's good, and it's given a clean bill of health, and this, that, and the third. Well, anyway, they didn't do a good job, because what happened was they swept the shit down and had forgotten to sweep out all the shit that fell down to the bottom. So that builds up and builds up and builds up and blocks the pipe from the boiler or the furnace. And what happens is carbon monoxide spews into the house. I didn't know at the time that I was suffering from this. What I did know was I was on the computer and I was down there for a bit, and I started to feel lightheaded a bit. But I said, it's just kind of an off day. It was like a fall day, crummy out, kind of like it rained, the leaves are all wet, the streets stay wet all day, and it's gloomy and shit like that. So I'm just not feeling myself, you know. It was just kind of an off day, and I kind of put it off to that. Some more time goes by, and I'm feeling more. So I'm sitting at the computer. Where's my mouse here? I'm sitting at the computer. It's stuck. There we go. I'm sitting at the computer, and I'm there, and I'm like losing it. Clicking the mouse and clicking the mouse, and I'm getting more and more loopy. Out of nowhere, for whatever reason, my mother came downstairs. Now, I had said to myself by this point, before she had come down, I better go lay down or something. I don't really, I don't know. I'm just not feeling well. My mother happened to come downstairs. She came down and she kind of poked her head around the stairs and she said, Jay? And I kind of looked over slowly. She said, are you all right? I said, no. She said, you don't look all right. Okay. She says, come upstairs. So I came upstairs, and now, because there was actual, oxygen, I started to feel a little bit better almost immediately. So I then stepped out onto the porch, and yeah, it was a shitty day and whatnot, and it was cold out, but even so, I just started coming back to life. And that's when we realized what had happened. My dad checked this or something. I think he had a clean out door or something, and it was just fucking packed to the gills with this shit. So he's like, those motherfuckers, they fucked everything up, stole that jewelry, fucking this and that, So I don't know what ended up happening with that. Probably nothing. But I almost died from carbon monoxide. Oh, did I mention that my dad had a carbon monoxide detector? Yeah. The thing is, they put expiration dates on things for a reason. I think he had bought this thing in 1987, 88, somewhere in there. And they last 10 years. And this was a good 3-4 years after that. This was a carbon monoxide detector that was made by Kidde, is how it's pronounced, Kidde. A lot of people call it Kitty or just Kid. A very common brand. And this was a special one because it had a numeric display that would display the carbon monoxide level. And the book said that if it reached a certain point, the alarm would sound. It's plugged in. It's on. The display is showing 000. And it's staying at 000. It never changed from that. And in fact, just for shits, even though I don't really do props or any fancy editing in these videos, I'm going to show you. Hang on just a second. I got this China meter here. Now, I just reset it. 118, 120. Now it's reset. So it needs to settle in for a bit. But you see, it's got a reading. Now, if that number gets to 100, I'm going to have a third episode with carbon monoxide. But it's reading, pretty low. 15, what did it say? Something like that. But, not to mention this thing is made in China. And as it sits, I've sometimes come down here and it's reading over 500. I reset it and then it reads like 15 again. If that much. It's reading 65 now. It bounces all over the place. It's going up. When you hold it, it interferes with it because now it's like 90. My hand is giving off carbon monoxide. I don't know. So this one kind of bounces around, but it changes all the time. And the CO2, carbon dioxide, if I breathe at it, 800 something. So clearly, 900. So clearly that carbon monoxide detector either wasn't sensitive enough or never was working properly for all of these years. It always has read 0, and here we are now, some 30, going on almost, 33 years that he bought this thing. More than that, 36, 35 years, or maybe more. And I guarantee you, this thing is still plugged in, still reading 0. It does nothing. And I've told him, I said, you got to replace these things. The one I got here, I don't remember when it was, six years ago, something. It crapped out. And it actually set the alarm off. And then it wouldn't reset. Because it had like a built-in time expired, China warranty up, throw out, something like that. So it just failed outright. These things do need to be replaced. And that was great because if I would have looked at that and that would have said, 75 or something, then maybe I would have said, that's reading higher than usual. This will give you an idea. Like now, it just said 70, and now it's down to 43. So it bounces around. This one's a little weird. I have another one of these that China sent, and it seems to be a lot more consistent in its readings. But it gives you something, at least, to go by. How correct or incorrect, I don't know, but it just showing 0 is a lot less effective. The other one happened during one of my final years at Tiny Middle. We had the fire alarm in the store, and that would periodically go off. And it was always a false alarm. So what happened was, and this part, I couldn't believe this shit, okay? So there's somebody, and we'll use this. So this is a clock thing. So make believe we sold this, right? So they're looking at it. And they're looking, and all of a sudden the fire alarm goes off. And they had these big, loud, like 130 fucking decibel, screamers all around the fucking store, and strobe lights. Okay, there was no mistaking that there was some sort of an alarm. There was no mistaking this. And this used to happen at Tiny Middle quite a lot. And that alarm would go off, and they're looking, and the shit would go off, and they kind of just look for a second, like, what's going on? Oh, let's see. Oh, what does it say over here? Oh, yeah. And they just totally ignore the fucking building could be on fire. And they're just standing there shopping. The big, fat, dumb American consumer. You people suck. You people fucking suck. You made my job hell. The public sucks. Anyways, so that used to go off. And then when I was in the shop, I would know when that would happen. I'd be on the phone with the customer. I'll do this here because the alarm was that side of me. Before it would go off, the alarm system would sort of power it up and then sound the alarm. And there was a quiet click from it. And I knew that if I was on the phone with a customer and I heard, I immediately said, hold on, I'm very sorry. The shit would go off. And then after, 30 seconds or so, they'd cancel it out, maybe less than that. And I'd say, I'm terribly sorry, sir, ma'am. The fire alarm in the building went off. It's a false alarm. I'm terribly sorry about that interruption. So like I was saying, or like you were saying, and it would go on from there. But it was a very common occurrence. It happened quite a bit. So anyway, they got whatever problem that was eventually sorted out. And time went on. Some random day, it was warm out. I don't know if it was summer or spring. Anyway, I don't know what the deal was. I come in, 9 a.m., store opened at 10, and I get in, and I'm walking from the main doors, and I come in, and something hit me. They say that carbon monoxide is colorless and odorless, and that's true. I could detect it because I know what it is from the previous poisoning. So I walked in, and immediately I said, something is off here. I couldn't figure out what it was quite yet. But the guy, the Spanish guy, the cleaning guy, had the floor polisher machine, and that was propane powered. He had used that machine for years. I was at this place fucking forever. And he used this machine every day of the week. He wasn't there on weekends, I don't believe, but every single day he would polish these floors. They looked decent. They were old, but they looked pretty good. So it did an okay job. Well, anyways, somehow, for some reason, out of the blue, somewhere, something wasn't right with that machine. I think when I walked in, he was using it, and my ear said, that engine is not running right. I could hear something was off with it. I couldn't tell you what it was, but definitely heard something a little amiss, and I sensed something. I don't know what it was. And I said, the hell with it. I don't know what it is. This place always smells weird, and weird feelings in the place, and passed it off as nothing. I went in the shop. I get started with my shit, get everything together, and then somewhere around 9:45 they call a store meeting. So now I have to come back out from the shop, which was kind of secluded. There were walls and all that to kind of block all of this. Back out to the main sales floor, where the guy was using this machine over an hour and change earlier. Or 45 minutes earlier. So we're standing there at the meeting, and I'm like, I'm not feeling great today. I don't know what it is. As soon as I walked in here, I could just tell. But I still passed it off as, I don't know, it's probably me. Something like that. Anyways, we do the meeting, and the manager used to go around and talk to every single employee and say, you got anything? You got anything? You got anything? And you were kind of forced to say something. So I looked up little sayings, little things, words of wisdom, as we actually ended up calling them, because I had them on a piece of paper. I get like a list of them, print it out, fold it up, and I keep it in my shirt pocket. And every day when they call the morning meeting, I'd pull it out, and I'd look at the next one on the list, and I'd memorize it. So I was called on, and I don't know if it was this day, but I remember this one because I like the saying. It went, I kind of jazzed it up a bit. I said, I'm the guy who's been here for a long time. I'm in the shop. You might know who I am, you might not, because I'm not out on the sales floor interacting with everybody. But, really, when it comes down to it, I'm a nobody. Nobody's perfect. Therefore, I'm perfect. So I like that little saying. So I would have little quips like that. And it turned into this little words of wisdom thing. And one or two of them didn't go over too well, but most times it did. And anyway, it helped pass the time. We go back in the shop, and maybe an hour or so further into the day, we're pushing like 11 a.m. at this point. The alarm starts going off. I'm like, oh, here we go to another false alarm. But I'm saying to myself, today, I don't remember if it sounded different or not. I think it's supposed to. Mine doesn't. I don't think. Or maybe it does. I can't remember even now. I don't want to set it off to find out. Anyway, I think it sounds different. So maybe it sounded different or whatever. But anyway, it went off. And I decided to get up and walk out to look on the sales floor. And here was the store manager. Not Pat, my manager, but the store manager. And he's yelling out, everybody please leave the building. Okay. Really? Wow, this is good. So I should have made a joke of it and went to Pat and said, you want me to take laptops out that have battery power so I can keep working on them outside? Because that's how much of a dick he was. He probably would have said that. I didn't think of it at the time. I just thought of it now. Anyway, we are evacuated from the building. Voluntarily, but I mean, there is an alarm going off. After all. So, we were evacuated from the building, and the fire department was called. There's no fire in the building, but they come in with their carbon monoxide, which is reading 6 now that it's just been sitting there, which is about where it normally reads. Sometimes it just goes bonkers. This one, but like now that I handled it, it went to 7, now 10, now 12. I don't know, but it just sits there. I guess maybe the air doesn't move over it, so it sits there. It's 15 now, it's nothing. They came in with their little handheld meters, and this thing fucking pegged the meter. And they said, holy shit, carbon monoxide. So now they go around the building, And they're looking and they're looking, but it was the summer, so there was no heat on. There were no appliances that used gas that were burning gas. We didn't have a dryer or a stove or even a barbecue that day. We only had one once a year, and that typically got the smoke alarms to go off, but that's another story that I probably told. Anyways, we're outside, and there's the fire department, and they said, yeah, carbon monoxide. Well, this building was built in such a way that it cannot be ventilated. There are no windows in this building. The only way you could see outside are the glass doors at the front and the loading dock door in the back. And for air to go through the building, it has to pass through all of the aisles, which fortunately were in the favor of air currents that they could just go. They weren't facing that, so they'd hit like a roadblock and have to flow over it, anything. So that was in their favor, but it didn't make a lick of difference. 4 or 5 fire departments showed up. A mobile triage unit showed up. Hazmat teams showed up. Okay? This was serious. Whatever it was very serious. As God is my witness, these big, fat, dumb, fucking American consumers would come up and they'd say, what's going on? I want to go in. I'm sorry, sir. There's carbon monoxide in the building. Everybody's been evacuated. But I need to get a booster. What do you mean? I need a booster for my wireless. What do you mean I can't go? I'll just go in and get it. I'll give you the money on the way out the door. Carbon monoxide doesn't mean nothing to them. Because like I said, they just stand there looking at the product. They don't even give a shit the alarm's going off. And you couldn't mistake it. It's not like it was inaudible. You heard it everywhere. Like in this house. That shit goes off. You fucking know about it. You fucking know. Okay? It is serious. And I got 4 bright orange fucking strobe lights if you're completely deaf. And I had that once where something got tripped in my alarm overnight. And that shit woke me right up. And I look, and the door to the bedroom was open like that much. And the hallway was going black. Orange, black, orange, black, orange, black, orange. So you know that something is fucking going on. There's 18 fire trucks in the fucking parking lot, all with flashing lights, running diesel engines, and this doesn't pose a potential problem because you need your booster? Holy shit, people. Well, anyways, the fire department says we need to ventilate this building. And the way we're going to do that is using big fans. Okay, reasonable, and it works. So they got these fans. What they are like an ordinary fan, except running them is a gasoline engine. Similar to what's on like a lawnmower. Something like that. So, you pull the rope, starts up, and the fan is blowing like mad at whatever RPM they could get out of this thing, And they got 2 of them. One by the entrance door, one by the exit door. Of course, they're wide open. And in the back, the loading dock door is open. Half hour goes by, they go check on it, they're like, this ain't even making a dent in it. They call for another fire department. Well, now, they come in, and these fans that they got are bigger. They got like a small tractor engine on them. You know, multiple cylinders and the whole thing. You know, and it's running. And these fans are blowing like fucking mad. And now there's more fire trucks. And they had a mobile, I was saying before, I think I got sidetracked, like a mobile triage or ambulance. And anybody who wanted to get checked out could go in there. I didn't. So we're standing out there in the parking lot. And these fans are running. And I'm just talking with the guys. And I said, I don't see how these fans are really going to work. They said, what do you mean? I said, well, they got a gasoline engine running them. That's putting out carbon monoxide, and it's blowing right in the building. So I'm wandering around a bit, and I remembered my previous episode with carbon monoxide. I got worried at that point, and I said, I don't like this, and I'm not going to endanger myself. So let me go see what the store manager, not my boss Pat, what the store manager, the big boss, had to say. So I went to him and I said, listen, I have some trepidations about re-entering this building. So he said, you have nothing to worry about. I said, why is that? He said, the fire department will not allow anyone back into this building until it's given the all clear. I said, all right. I don't care what their meters say. I care what I feel. So he's like, well, you know, I can assure you that when you go back in, everything will be fine. All right. Well, sometime later, their China meter malfunctioned. I mean, they got the one, they went to my dad's house and got the one that showed 0. And they went in and it still showed 0. And they said, okay, everything's good. I had forgotten to mention that other people had also mentioned something about they didn't quite feel right. I don't know what the level of carbon monoxide was, but I couldn't imagine that after that amount of time, and I think the air conditioning in the building was running, I believe it was actually, so air is moving around and things, that some of this might have dissipated, especially with the front doors opening and closing all the time, with all these fucking big fat dumb American consumers coming in to either wring my neck about their computer that they wanted done yesterday, even though they brought it in today, or to get a booster. So that's letting all the cold air out, of which we had about a degree, because it never worked right, the AC. That's another story. Anyways, well, anyways, they give the all clear. So they shut these fans down, all the trucks pack up, everybody goes away, and we go back in the building. I went back to the big boss and I said, listen, I'm going to go with what you said, but if I don't feel right when I re-enter this building, and I'll give it a fair shot, I'm not going to walk in and walk right out. I said, if I don't feel comfortable in this building, then I'm leaving. And I did just that. I gave it a fair shake. I went in, and about 15-20 minutes, I started getting that feeling back again. And I said, nuh-uh, no way. So I went to Pat, who was there. I said, that's it, I'm leaving. He said, fuck you, you are. You're not leaving. I said, oh, I'm leaving, all right. I'm not going to stay in this building and have my health endangered. And he's yelling at me as I'm walking out. And who do we bump into on the way out? The store manager. And Pat like runs off to him and says, hey, he says he's leaving because of the carbon monoxide. And the big boss said, let him go. Because he knew that if I had collapsed from it or something like that, we'd have a workman's comp, workers' comp, they have to work its comp, whatever they call it these days, because nobody's male or female anymore and don't know who anybody is. But I remember when I told Pat I was leaving, I said, no, I don't feel right. I'm getting out of here. We'll try this shit again tomorrow. That's exactly what I said. Those words exactly. I said, we'll try this shit again tomorrow. And Pat had no recourse. The big boss had no recourse. And I went home early. And saved my own life. The next day, I went in and the building was perfectly fine. The cleaning guy did not polish the floors because they had deemed that polisher to have emitted the carbon monoxide. Didn't I say something a while ago about didn't sound right to me? Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I knew it right off. I didn't put 2 and 2 to make 5 together quite right, but I knew something was definitely off. So, like they say, it's colorless and odorless, but I sort of have like a sixth sense, if you will, where I can sense it. So, anyway, when I started the heat up this year, just for shits and grins, because I had this as an extra one, I figured I'd put it down here, and when it behaves, see, now that again I picked it up, it's going a bit bonkers again. But I said, just for shits, because I have it, why let it sit there and perish on its own? Why not use it and see if there might actually be a problem? And it's read perfect so far this entire heating season, and I expect that will probably continue. But just for the fun of it, yes, indeed, I have almost died from carbon monoxide poisoning twice in my life. Here's a little bit of a bonus that's not really a bonus because you're not getting it. I have a video I put together soon after that incident at Tiny Middle, and I've never released it to this day. I don't know if I ever will. It's maybe a very short video clip and a bunch of stills in like a slideshow. Not revealing it because then you'll know what Tiny Middle is because you'll see it. So I'm not revealing that. Not now. Will it be ever? It's not. I'm not worried about statute of limitations or anything like that. I don't want to advertise for them. Okay? If you're smart enough to figure out what it means, don't put it in the comments. Let everybody figure it out for themselves. But I'm not just giving you the answer either. Anyway, that's going to wrap this one up. I hope that I never have to go through that again. And if you remember, few weeks ago, many weeks ago, some time ago, back in the day, I posted a video about a house fire a block away from me. And I happened to be in the basement. I think I was doing a China review. And I just wandered over to the boiler. It was cold. It was December of 2021. And I had wandered over to the boiler. And I said, no, something's not right here. And I couldn't quite tell what it was. I said, is my boiler fucked up? And I got worried. I said, should I call the fire department? No, wait a minute. I have a carbon monoxide detector and I know it's working. I did not have one of these. Oh, look, it died. It goes to sleep. Kind of dumb. But anyway, I said, should I call the fire? Well, I don't know. They're just going to fucking wreck shit. Should I shut the heat off? I wasn't sure. And I heard something outside. I said, oh no, I said, let me go outside. And I went upstairs and I went outside and I saw that there was commotion and I had smelled smoke in the air. So what happened was the wind, because that was only a block away, went over my chimney and some particles from it were able to come down and fall out the vent on top of the gas boiler. And that made me notice it. So I'm very aware of it. I may not be able to tell you what it is, but I'm very aware of it. And I almost died twice from it, and I don't want there to be a third episode. That was a scare enough by the boiler, and fortunately was not anything I had to worry about. That is going to wrap up this episode of Old War Stories with Uncle Jay. I thank you very kindly for watching, and I greatly appreciate it. Do you have any carbon monoxide stories? Post them down in the comments below and jerk off this channel like everybody else does. Now, if you got something to say, you can go and say it, okay? That's it. Anyway, thanks again. Appreciate it very much. Take care, hit that like, and hit that subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.